Thank you so much for coming out this evening. It's just wonderful to see the turnout. My name's Tanya Taylor Rubenstein, and I'm the artistic director for an organization called Story Healers. And we're just feel so grateful to have this offering with you all tonight. All these wonderful storytellers, including 4 storytellers from our most beloved nonprofit, Kitchen Angels. And they're just the best. And it's so wonderful because representing Kitchen Angels as telling their stories, we have 2 volunteers, a former board member who is now a client, and the person who runs the kitchen over there. So you're in for a treat with them. And the way the evening will work, the first 4 storytellers will come out and share their stories with you. Those are all from Kitchen Angels. And then we'll have about a little 15-minute intermission, and then some other wonderful members of our community are here sharing their heart and soul-based stories. So please stay for it all if you can. And I just want to say this is my 4th Story Healers Facilitator training, and it has been just an incredible journey. It's after doing so many monologue shows as I've done for so many years, working with many populations of people, it's so fulfilling for me to be passing that work on to others. And those 4 women, Carrie Lowe, Francesca Schrady, Sally Jean Fox, and Mary Reeves have just done a wonderful job facilitating these people in their stories. And one thing, for those of you who may not have seen one of my Project Life Stories shows before, or Story Healer shows before, these shows, you heard about the performance long before they actually started creating their performances. These pieces have only been written and being performed in the last 4 days, and I don't say that as like an excuse. It's just I like people to know the process of people coming together and creating these stories in such a short period of time, and the power that comes from that. So many thanks to my wonderful co-facilitator in training, Robin Duda, who's been just amazing. It's just wonderful and a huge blessing in my life, and has done such a wonderful job. And she and I will be doing actually a new retreat together called Abundant Life Monologues, and Robin does lots of great work. So if you're inspired, you could get more information out after the show. Feel free to sign up on our mailing list for more upcoming shows, solo performances, and monologues. And with that, I introduce you to the 2 facilitators for the first group who will introduce their performers, Mary and Sally.
I'm Sally Fox, and just Sunday night, I was totally excited and terrified because I was on the spot delivering my first monologue, having been coached by Tanya and by Robin. But now I'm equally thrilled because I've had the opportunity to work with 4 great women who gave their heart and soul to this work over the past 4 days. It's been such a privilege to work with them. Beth Dykman, Hala Harvey, Teresa Norton, and Jai Prishkulnik. And of course, my co-facilitator, Mary Reeves. It's a wonderful organization. They're thrilling women, and I think you're going to really enjoy it.
Well, my name is Mary, and it has been such an amazing journey. These past few weeks, they've been very intense and very exhilarating and sometimes exhausting. It's been a roller coaster ride, but it has been an experience I wouldn't trade for anything. Tonight, I'm really grateful for all y'all for coming, all y'all, and for everyone I've worked with, everybody involved in this production. The learning curve has been steep, and it's been incredibly enriching in my life, and I really look forward to carrying it forward, because storytelling is so important for us all. We all have our stories. Tonight I have a special privilege of not only being here for our team, but to actually introduce you to Beth Dykman, who's right here. She's sitting at the edge in the blue. Hey, Beth. And Beth composed her own monologue, but she's asked me to read it for her, so I'm really deeply honored. And thank you, Beth. I'll do my best. So welcome. I feel like everyone has a story they need to tell. My story? Well, when I was young, my family would go camping. We'd pull a tent trailer behind our car and visit the Badlands and other national parks. I used to love to hike and swim. When I was 13, my grandparents took my sister and me on a trip to Alaska. We took the train and then a bus to the Canadian Rockies. I can still remember the blues and greens of those parks. When we got on the ship to Ketchikan, we had a wonderful dinner. They served us charcoal broiled halibut and the biggest baked potato I'd ever seen in my whole life. It was fresh and delicious. I remember how cold it was outside. It was the 4th of July, and my birthday is July 5th. My grandparents were beginning to go into old age, so it was a little rough on them. They planned the trip through a travel agency, Soaker Travel. Then in high school, I started working part-time at a travel agency, AAA. I wanted to travel. I used to love to travel. No, maybe I should say I love to travel. Why does it have to be in the past tense? I got my first symptoms of MS around my 20th birthday. I was in school studying business and tourism at Michigan State in the School of Hotel and Restaurant Management. I was planning a trip to Spain so I could meet the language requirements. I love Spanish. But one day, I woke up with double vision and my nerves tingling up and down my arm and leg on my left side. I had trouble walking. The doctors waited for a while before they made a diagnosis. They gave me a spinal tap before they told me I had MS. I went to the library and read all about it and thought, this doesn't look too good. I found out that MS is a chronic, progressive disease of the central nervous system. I chose to leave school. My parents sent me back a couple of times, but I had another flare-up. And just when I had switched my major to parks and recreation, because I had really loved national parks. At first, I worked in the townhouse. Oops, I ended up leaving school. Oops, said that, sorry. I ended up leaving school. That May, my girlfriend and I traveled across the county, all across the country with our backpacks and 10-speed bicycles. We ended up in Santa Fe. I love the word Santa Fe, holy faith, and I love the Spanish language. My girlfriend was supposed to go back and marry her high school sweetheart in the fall, but we both ended up staying in Santa Fe. At first, I worked in the little townhouse restaurant, but I needed a steady job, so I went down to work at AAA. Later on, I moved to another travel agency. Then I started my own agency, Adios Travel. I traveled to Jamaica and Machu Picchu, Peru, Italy. Machu Picchu was moist and green. They have a whole different ecosystem in the Andes. I wish I had traveled more, but a lot of my time was taken up managing my employees. I had a lot of clientele at my firm, but I noticed that the industry was changing and not in a good way. I was lucky I was able to sell the business. After a while, I went to work for another agency where I brought my own clientele. About 10 years ago, I noticed that my symptoms were getting worse. I chose to leave before I messed anybody up. I started to not trust myself. I was encouraged to leave, in fact. It's hard because I have a disability, and sometimes I'm still angry about it, and other times it's fine, and I think I've learned so much from it. I am always hungry. I really can't cook anymore. I have a stove, but with my disability, it's really not good to use the heating element. I might get burned. The last time I cooked a meal, I made a big mess that I had to clean up. I was standing in the kitchen cooking spaghetti. I had to pour off water from the boiling noodles, and I had a hard time carrying the pot to the stove, but I managed. I lost some of the noodles down the drain, and after I drained the noodles, I put them back in the pot and added a can of tomatoes. I wanted to add more ingredients, but I didn't have much that I could add. I got really hungry, so I started eating from the pot and spilling noodles all over myself. Spaghetti ran down my chin and onto my t-shirt. I didn't give a rat's ass because I was so hungry. I sort of got angry at myself because I couldn't get the noodles from a pot into a dish. I didn't even have any Parmesan cheese, but I ate the noodles anyway. That's why I appreciate Kitchen Angels so much. My food comes, it's already made up, and I get to eat. I love food, all kinds. Being a travel agent, I went places and got to eat the local food. I always enjoyed the foods that were part of the culture. I don't like hunger. When I'm taken out of my familiar surroundings where I have my things without my feelings, When I'm taken out of my familiar surroundings where I have my things, I feel scared. I don't have access to my food. I can't drive, so I can't take off like everybody else. I have to call the van 24 hours in advance, but it's very hard to plan. I moved into Casa de Campo at Thanksgiving. It's a nice spot and closer to town. I had a visitor in December, and I must have gotten too tired because I fell. I hit the round oak table with my elbow and fell onto the tile floor. I was lying there thinking I needed to call someone. I didn't want to bleed to death. I used my cane to pull my phone off the table. My friends were all at Christmas parties, but when I finally reached a friend, she yelled, "Beth, call 911!" Boy, did I feel like an idiot. I ended up with a compound fracture in my arm. You can see my scars. I spent 2 weeks in St. Vincent's. Then I was transferred to Albuquerque to the medical resort. It's funny that they call it a resort because I felt incarcerated. They told me that I couldn't leave for more than 4 hours at a time, that I couldn't even go to Santa Fe. That's why I felt incarcerated, and it wasn't pleasant. I just had to make the best of it. I met some nice people who I haven't heard from in a while. I'm not going to go back there because they might take me hostage. But it was a pretty sad way to bring in 2014. My brother-in-law reminded me that things are going to get worse. I don't like to think about it. He asked me about the future and said I could live with them. That scares the hell out of me. But what do I know? What do I know? I know what I know. I like it here. The first time I arrived in New Mexico, I fell in love with it. It's my home. The blue sky, the clear blue sky, the clean air. I really appreciate Kitchen Angels. I don't know how long they've been coming to deliver food to me. Maybe already 8 years. I don't know all my delivery people by name. Sometimes they don't have time to talk. They're busy delivering. But I enjoy seeing them. They're all nice people. Sometimes we chat. How you doing? What you been up to? I'm getting older. I really like sitting on my patio. I like to read or ride my scooter downtown. I don't have to talk all the time. I find it interesting that people don't like the silence and that they have to keep talking. I can be alone with myself and be perfectly happy. Once, when I was 20, right after I was diagnosed with MS, I ran into someone who told me, "You're not going to live another 10 years. I thought, whoa, I can't have that. Now, I can't believe that I'm almost 60 years old. My birthday hasn't quite happened yet, but I'm here. Every day that I'm alive, I'm grateful. It's wonderful."
The house I grew up in was in Wichita Falls, Texas. I loved that place. It was like a palace. Good things and good people lived there, and I belonged. The rooms seemed large, and there was order in each room. The front door was locked at night, was only locked at night when we were in bed. The back door led to the backyard, where there was a pecan tree and a squirrel cage underneath it, and a laundry and storeroom, a mulberry bush, and a garage with an apartment built over it. And there was the alley, where all kinds of intriguing things could happen. I remember the excitement of returning home after 4 long weeks away at summer camp and running through the house, room to room, and the slightly musty smell from the house being closed for several weeks. I remember the Fetters window air conditioners and how I could stand in front of them and sing, my voice vibrating in the cold air. What a joy to live in that place, sandwiched between 2 sisters and a brother, and my sweet, pretty mom, and my handsome, worldly dad. When I was about 12, Daddy decided we needed to add a room, the den. It was modern and beautiful, and some people said the addition ruined the front of the house, but it was a lifesaver with 4 teenage children. Suddenly, we had this amazing place. There was a picture window overlooking the new tile patio with a barbecue grill made out of a barrel. There was a hi-fi system to listen to the musicals that we loved, as well as Elvis, Frank Sinatra, and Barbra Streisand. We even had a built-in TV in front of the new modern furniture, and Kachina dolls danced on the brick wall. The room was totally soundproofed from the rest of the house. Daddy finally had a real bar, complete with a key to keep his no-good kids out of his booze. Fat chance. We teenagers scored. We were already sneaking out in the middle of the night, smoking cigarettes and joyriding in Mother's stolen car. One of Daddy's friends had warned him, "Francis, a wild goose never laid a tame egg." So the party was at the Harveys for both the parents and the teenagers. We rocked. I always thought I had the best parents in Wichita Falls. We had so many good times in that room, and we thought it would go on forever. It was not so many years after I finished college and left home to begin my own journey that my world was really rocked when my father suddenly died at age 66. Hong Kong flu, pneumonia. I was 24. Now no chance to ever really know him and hear all his stories. He was just gone. The family was devastated. Mother stayed in our house a couple more years and then moved to an apartment. She was 20 years younger than my father, so we had her for many more years. But she also died at a relatively young age. When Mother was diagnosed with cancer, she refused to hear her prognosis. She would say, "If something happens to me," as she rewrote her will. After a few months of treatment, she began to fade fast. A few days at St. Vincent's, and she was sent home with hospice care. The nurse said, "It could be up to a month." I decided to go back to Dallas to be with my family. As I leave that day, I said, "Mother, I love you. I'll be back soon. I kiss her and turn my back, walking down that very long hall. I hear my footsteps echo, and I think, is she hearing them too? A day later, my sister calls and says, Hayla, if you want to see Mother again, you should come right back. But I didn't make it in time. We sisters had always said, no nursing home for our mother. We'll take care of her ourselves. And we'll see that her socks always match. But we didn't get that chance. So with no old parents to take care of, I decided to join the work of Kitchen Angels. 7 years ago, I became a volunteer, and now I'm a board member, and I work in the kitchen and deliver meals. Here's one of my driving days. I've changed names to protect people's privacy. After I've gathered the client meals, I start up my car and play with the air conditioning controls because it's so darn hot. Turn left onto Siler, past Agua Fria, right on Alameda, and to Steve's driveway. Red dot, restricted meal. He's shy. One day, after a couple of years, he asks my name and says he's trying to learn the names of his delivery people. I tell him, Hayla. It's a hard name to remember, but if you'll just think of a halo, maybe that will help. Next week, he doesn't mention my name, and in fact, never has since then. But it doesn't matter. He doesn't feel well, and I can tell. I don't know his diagnosis, but it doesn't matter. He's just sweet. Next to Abe, who is so hard. He has his dog chained up in his little yard. He has food and boxes piled up around his little house. But he is so grateful for the service. I bring food for his cat and dog, and I pet his dog, and I say, "You're a good dog," several times. It is so hard, and I try not to judge. The next delivery is Bill, who has multiple health problems, but always a smile. We talk about food, the weather, his relatives, his health. Then there's Evelyn. She delivered for Kitchen Angels for 11 years and is now receiving the service because she's elderly and has dementia. I'm always invited in and expected to sit and visit in her small apartment. She has lovely folk art on her walls. She tells me about her life in New York as a librarian and how she saw all the Broadway shows when she was living there, and how she came to Santa Fe to organize the library at the Folk Art Museum. She tells me about growing up in South Carolina and how her mother and aunt ran a boarding house. She said she never met her father, but was on her way to meet him when he died of a heart attack, with a letter from her in his pocket. My newest client is Joseph. The third day I delivered to him, I asked him if he had made the designs carefully chiseled into the cinder block wall around his front yard. He did, and seemed pleased that I asked, and invited me in to show me some more of his work. I stepped into a sunroom with a low ceiling and saw there were bottles filled with pieces of glass that made a lovely barrier to the outside. He invited me into another room with other works, sheets of glass with glass objects sandwiched in between. He said he could no longer do the work since his Parkinson's. He said that things like pulling on his socks that used to take 4 or 5 seconds now take 45 seconds as he has to figure out the angle to pull the sock on. I told him my friend Ted's daughter has been diagnosed with Parkinson's. He said, "Tell her to read. Tell her to keep a journal. You do not want to become Parkinson's." His lovely work is all around him in his home, but he can no longer create his art. It is another situation. It is another hard situation. I wish my mother and daddy were here to see me.
I am an actor. I once read that actors are some of the most driven and courageous people on the face of the earth. Well, they are also some of the most rejected. A few months ago, I went to California for the whole month of February for pilot season, a number of months in which production companies are doing lots of the casting for upcoming TV shows and films. For me, a TV and film actor for 3 years, it wasn't a big deal to go out to Hollywood, spending thousands on workshops and classes. It just put me in the same category as the millions of others who said, "Mom, I want to be famous." I went to California that month thinking, Jai, kids come from all over the country, maybe even the world. They come to Hollywood to make it big. Some kids have devoted their lives to this dream since they were born. Some kids are forced into this acting by their parents to relive a dream through their predecessors. And some kids drag their parents into it with them. So of all the millions upon millions of people who want to be famous, some who may be proactively working for it, and others who are simply in the same restaurant as Steven Spielberg at the right time, what kind of chance do you have? And I can honestly say that I don't know. So for the first little while, I was devoted to acting more than anything. I made it my business to know everything I possibly could about the business. I read a lot. I read books on monologues on monologues, articles on character building, and entries on audition technique. My parents had our headshots professionally taken. They labored over perfecting a resume for hours and spent time and effort searching for parts anywhere they could, even Craigslist. And it was paying off. For about the first year I was into acting, I got almost every role I auditioned for. I was pretty happy about it all, too. I had been signed with an agent, and everyone who I talked to said, "Jai, you're going places." We'd spend 12 hours driving up to LA, me watching movies in the back, my dad not getting any sleep, arriving in the Golden State for a 15-minute audition, stopping at a nice place for lunch, then turning right around to go home, only to get a call on the highway that I have another audition and should probably come back to do it in person. My family was devoted to my acting. It was no concern of mine where the money for all of this was coming from. So 7th grade came. I plundered on, oblivious to any rejection that might be happening. I was on a high. I believed that I had an ideal relationship with my parents. I told them quite literally everything. I went to an all-girls school, so I didn't have any boys at the moment to rave about. But when I spotted a hottie walking down the street, it was news at the dinner table. I didn't see it then, but I was sheltered. I was not allowed to wear necklaces to school, for my mother's fear that the chain would get snagged on a tree and I would die. I wasn't allowed to wear scarves until this year for the same reason. "Why can't I, Mommy? All my friends do. I'm not gonna die," I pouted. "Here's why, Jai. I don't know how your friends will react when they see a scarf. They might get really excited, and one friend is pulling on it from one side, and the other friend is pulling on it from the other side, and meanwhile, you're in the middle dying." I was also spared from more crude topics, human sexuality in particular. But all of that ended one day during a discussion in Hebrew school when I thought that a blowjob was something that a hairdresser did. I was mortified. My friends laughed at me. To them, the sheer thought of a 7th grader not being able to comprehend that people had sex for other reasons than reproduction was inconceivable. I had an epiphany. I was 13 and it hit me like a car going 70 miles per hour. I was being rejected, but not only by my friends, by everyone. I thought of all the auditions on which I'd worked for hours. If I never got a call from my agent, then I never got the role, and I didn't even know why, just that there was something they didn't like about me. All I knew was that someone else was better than me. Rejection began showing itself in places where only kindness had ever reigned. I wanted to be rid of it. I wanted to see the world through rose-colored glasses once more. But alas, that was not to be. As 7th grade ceased and the long-awaited summer came on, I began the hunt for a charity that I could donate time and money to as part of my bat mitzvah process. My dad had been a volunteer driver for 7 years at Kitchen Angels at the time, and I often joined him on routes, delivering food and making friends. I thought that KA was the perfect choice, and I was hired as a driver coordinator. I'm the person who stands behind the long steel table and matches food to bags, a professional dot reader, after Teresa, of course. I loved coming to Kitchen Angels on Friday afternoons. I am trusted with responsibility. At Kitchen Angels, no one gets rejected and no one gets turned away. At Kitchen Angels, the volunteers are treated as equals and are looked at by each other with utmost respect. I'm trusted to hold the lives of clients in my hands. But still, I face rejection, especially in my acting. This year has been the toughest of all. I have always had my parents to be devoted to my craft. They've always been my closest benefactors. I thought of my mom and dad as people that I could turn to no matter what, and they would always be there for me. Dare I call them my best friends because, as my mom says, I'm your parent, not your equal. But really, they kind of were. But maybe this year I expected too much from them, because I forgot to tie in one tiny detail. I am changing. All of a sudden, the things I used to find funny just didn't make me laugh anymore. In fact, I hardly ever laughed at all. The things that I used to find enjoyable, like playing dolls with my sister, just seemed pointless and pathetic. I began pulling more inside myself, sharing less and trying to figure things out alone. Unfortunately, my parents and sister all mistook these changes for a bad attitude. I was changing and my acting wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. Then my parents started saying things like, "You just aren't the girl you used to be," and "You're not special anymore." Oh! They were frustrated with me, but I was too. Then, just when I needed it, something kind of miraculous happened. A boy came into my life and pulled me out of all the chaos and showed me that I wasn't alone. Suddenly, I was happy again all the time. Nobody really liked that I was with him. But ultimately, it didn't matter what kind of boy he was and what kind of problems he came from. What mattered was how he made me feel like a princess and could always make me laugh or smile at the very least. I wasn't rejected. He was someone I could totally be myself around. Eventually, tired of being labeled as rebellious, I broke up with him, even though we were still in love, knowing that sometimes you have to move on without certain people. If they're meant to be in your life, they'll catch up somehow. I kept getting rejected in acting, and my parents started getting on my case. My mom wouldn't get off me on my diet and how I didn't exercise. She started asking me about what size of bra I was wearing, and that I looked much bigger in that area than I actually was. I thought that was a personal question and thought, could we please not talk about that? But I knew that would only set her off. When I tried to complain to my dad about this issue as it kept arising, he only told me, "Well, it's very disappointing that this is happening, Jai. We have devoted so much to this acting and you're not the little girl that you used to be." And he was serious. They actually had a problem with me growing. All I wanted was privacy and to be removed from my parents' constant presence so that I wouldn't blow up at them. Whenever I complained about needing a break, my mother would say, "You're a little kid. Little kids don't get stressed." My vision narrowed in anger. I am not a little kid, I thought. All I wanted was the respect and trust that came with getting older. I knew that my parents had what's best in mind for me, but in the heat of the moment, I just didn't see it. I tried many approaches, either going along or being rebellious. But when I still didn't feel trusted, I realized that was only because my parents loved me, and they couldn't bear the thought of ever losing me. They were struggling just like I was. I saw that all I truly needed was trust in myself, and thus concluded my 9th grade year. I was asked yesterday where I wanted to end up at the end of my monologue, what transition I want to have made. I couldn't answer the question. I was so focused on trying to convey some revolutionary message, when in fact, all I needed to do was tell my story and trust myself. And that's just what I did.
I have to follow that. Anyway, good evening, and I would like to say hello and start my monologue. Anyway, for the past 2.5 weeks, I'm sure any of you people that have been at the kitchen have noticed me asking people to check out this handout. Check out this handout. There's going to be a fundraiser for Kitchen Angels. What is it? Oh, it's Angel Monologues, 9 storytellers. What do you think? I was begging people, urging people, please try it out. People that I thought maybe would be really good at it. Dan, hey Dan, you're an experienced actor. Why don't you try? No, I have too much going on that weekend. Okay. Chris, I can see you up on that stage. I'm moving away. I'm going to be in Virginia. Juliana, you're a local girl. You'll be around, right? I can see you, the local grown girl up on the stage. I'm so afraid of the stage. I said, all right. Anyway, we did end up recruiting 4 people. That was really good. We were happy with that. Tuesday morning, Lauren was in there calling up everybody. Check. Everybody's here, 4 people. Then all of a sudden, the phone calls started. I'm stuck in Texas. I can't come home. Oh, man, one off. What was the other one? Oh, yeah. I just don't want to do it. And then the third one, something's happened. I have to go up to Colorado. Great. All of a sudden I see Lauren coming towards me with this look on her face. Teresa, will you do it? Cut to the afternoon of Tuesday, 1 o'clock. I'm in the boardroom with these 3 monologue specialists. They're explaining to me and my fellow storytellers what the next 4 days will be like. Circles and writing, and that ultimately Friday you'll be up on the stage in front of friends and mostly strangers, and I will be performing and telling them my story. My initial thought, what story? Anyway, the 2 other participants had seen the show last Sunday, and they told me a few things. They shared and said it was about this and that, and I was like, oh my God, it's going to sound like gut-wrenching. I'm going to be up-chucking, and it's going to be soul-searching and just a rehash of my shadowy and dysfunctional past. I did not want to go there again. So I decided because I'm getting healthier and happier most of the time, I'm going to tell stories that make you all laugh. And may I add, one of the circles we did was to stand around and just laugh. Oh, yes! You guys should try it if you feel like it. It really works. I got a little stitch in my side and I wet myself. So you all should try it. You all? Did I just say you all? I've been hanging around a Halo too much. So started a 4-day writing workshop to see what stories or story was inside of us that was going to come out through this process. And through the writings we did, I figured out that I always loved hearing and telling stories. I think the first storyteller in my life was my Uncle Johnny. Well, he's Uncle John now because he's 80 years old. We would sit around the table, this big dinner table at Grandma and Grandpa Di Cataldo's house, after lots of delicious Italian food, and probably eating one of this really delicious Italian pizzelle cookies and drinking a little strong coffee, my grandmother used to call it. And Uncle Johnny would stop remembering. Hey, Angelo, his brother, would say, remember that time Dada, his grandfather, put that grass fire out with his feet, he stomped on it and he got all blisters and all kinds of burns on his feet and ankles and he wouldn't go to the doctor, so Grandma had to make that old remedy of leaves and rub them around his legs. That was crazy. And how about that dandelion wine he used to make? They both nodded their heads to that. And how about his garden shanty house? It was filled with all kinds of junk. And he puttered around that place all day long, my uncle said. He barely would come in, only when it was time to sleep. And speaking of sleep, the fact that my uncles had to share the bedroom with my grandfather, their grandfather was so disgusting because he used a stinking pea pot that he left under the bed instead of getting up and go to the john. I could tell that was not one of their fondest moments of the bar. Well, even though I never met Francesco Palantonio, I do know he was a good Italian. He was good to his wife and his kids. He never smoked. He died with not a tooth in his mouth. My mom said at 88 he died no teeth. And I know all this from listening to this group of relatives, my mom, my aunts and uncles, just from listening as we were sitting around a table. I got to know these people from my past, and it helped me to become who I am now. So now, instead of sitting, I'm standing around a table at Kitchen Angels, volunteers showing off their beautiful new crowns, their implants, their dental implants. And realizing we all have the same dentist. And at the same time, we're getting serious here, we're making sure that Danny Kaye does not get any onions in his meal. He'll be awfully sick. He's terribly allergic. Give him a yellow and a green dot. Also, Standy D, she needs every single one of her food items pureed, not only the protein, everything. Otherwise, she can't eat it. Give her a red and 2 blue dots. Okay. Now, it's 1958, March 18th, early in the morning. My mom is getting me ready for school. I'm in the 2nd grade. I can remember where I was sitting, right on this chair next to the stove. It was really warm there. She was clipping on my little parochial school bow tie on those Peter Pan collared shirts that you had to wear. Well, some of us had to wear them. No sign of my dad. He had called my mom earlier, apparently, and said he was on his way home. The radio was on, top of the refrigerator. WICE-AM on your dial. News, sports, and weather. Now we have the top story. Leo Dennis Norton of Providence plummeted 40 feet down an elevator shaft while at Eddy Street Lounge last night. He was taken to Rhode Island Hospital where he is in stable condition. What did he just say? My father, Leo Diddy Norton, just fell down an elevator shaft? Then the phone started ringing. I, in spite of all this, was sent to school that day. Off I went. And when I got there, all the nuns were there. Oh, Teresa, your poor father, give him this medal. We're going to say prayers for him. Honestly, he really didn't need prayers or medals. He needed AA. And believe it or not, Leo lived to tell the tale, out drinking on St. Patrick's Day. Him and his brother Jack thought he was opening the men's room door. Another storyteller in my life is Diane, and I don't know why everybody that knows her calls her Doll Baby, so she's Doll Baby to me. Anyway, the first time we met was outside of Providence, Rhode Island Deli. A mutual friend introduced, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. Meet you rather. I noticed right off her shoes. They were very expensive. Really nice pair of loafers with those little tassel weegens, nothing I would ever wear. And I said, nice shoes, but they need to be cared for better. I could polish them for you. Every single time after that, when Doll and I were together and we met someone new, she would tell that story of how we met. Hey, I grew up in the era of polishing shoes. What can I say? In fact, I still have the shoe polishing box that my dad used to keep all of the Norton girls' shoes shined. And Diane would tell many other good stories. She would regale us with her childhood stories often. In fact, time and time again. Finally, one day, her daughter Jade was about 12 years old at the time, and said, Mom, you have told us that story 100 times. Diane's reply was, And if I can, I will tell it 100 more times, because you don't know the people in person that I'm talking about, and you need to know them. It's your heritage, Jade. Jade got it. And those are two memorable storytellers in my life. And now I have a final story. About 2001, I was at a standstill job, and I wanted to make a difference and make a better future for myself. So I quit that job and secured a job at Whole Foods. I would be working in the specialty department, cold cuts, cheeses, condiments, beer and wine, right up my alley. So the first 7 days are orientation, employee handbook, going over the rules and regulations with the orientation supervisor. Everything's good. I'm working in my department, I'm getting to know people, looking forward to advances. And then about 3.5 weeks in, my department supervisor informs me that the head honcho upstairs needs me to take my nose rings out. What? After 3.5 weeks, I went through orientation. I mean, you didn't see them day one when I was saying I wanted to work there? I don't know about that. Anyway, long story short, in a few months, I saw an ad in the paper that said Kitchen Angels is looking for a kitchen manager. And I'll tell you, I recently had my 13th year anniversary, and I love being a kitchen angel. I love being a kitchen angel. I get to be myself, and I wear whatever jewelry I want to wear. And it seems nose rings do not influence food at all. I've met some of the most wonderful volunteers. Some have become friends, even close friends. I have been given the responsibility to encourage a kitchen full of people to cook together with love and understanding. Currently, we cook close to 130 meals a day. 5 days a week, we cook for people in our community, folks that need the healing and nourishment that only food can give. And I share stories about my family often while in this kitchen of mine, and honestly, not all of my family stories are comical and amusing. All I know is this Italian girl from Providence can tell a good story, and that ability started around a table that was filled with food, love, and stories.